And so we have an action-packed session for you. And if you're not hungry for lunch, perhaps we'll work up an appetite. But we're going to be covering a lot of ground. We're going to be talking about 3 campaigns that PepsiCo has run with us in this past year. And what we're going to be talking about is the different targeting tactics that were deployed for each one, because each one of them had a different data-driven strategy attached to it. And there was also different KPIs that were attached to these campaigns as well. And as such, we use different forms of measurement to prove out the positive outcomes. So before we get going, Terrence, why don't we ask you, my friend, what is your role at PepsiCo? What is your mission?
Thank you for having me here. Yes, so I've been working at PepsiCo for the past just under 2 years. Previously I was over on the agency side, and I was repping Bubbly and Life Water over on the agency side. And I had a good conversation then with my former manager who had moved over to Pepsi, and they wanted to start an in-house media capability. And this would be a pilot. This would be something complementary to what they currently do with other media agencies. And right now, we're standing up, our remit is to stand up an in-house capability, which is a big task. We've got a small team, so we're here today. But we do a lot of really good work with a number of brands, and still work on Bubbly. And then we'll talk about Soul Boost in a little bit. But yeah, we lean on a lot of partners, and one of those being Adomni, who's been very good at holding our hand along the way to digital iPhone.
Well, thank you for that. So there's a tremendous amount of options for marketers to consider when reaching the consumers, and it could be considered daunting. Cheers. It could be considered daunting, but it also could be considered opportunistic. And so the question becomes, Terrence and team, when you're starting to think about all the different ingredients that make up the digital media mix, what is the catalyst that typically, what is the catalyst that allows you to incorporate digital out of home into the equation?
Well, 5 years ago, digital out of home looked very different than it does today. We are planning holistic media strategies, digital media strategies for our brands, and under that umbrella does fall digital out of home. We are constantly looking to push the needle, test out new partners, and in this case, when we started working with Adomni, we had never yet tested digital out of home, so it was definitely a learning curve for all of us. But where we see digital out of home playing in the media mix is, we're reaching an incremental consumer sometimes, and we're able to reach them while they are not distracted in the same way that you would have somebody who's watching on their couch, double screen syndrome. You're able to catch somebody in a moment of point of purchase, perhaps, and that is super enticing to us. It's something that is going to provide a lot of value, I think, over time for marketers in the industry.
Cool. All right, so we're going to dive into each of these campaigns, but first, let's check out a video from the first Bubbly activation. So the mission here was to drive brand awareness, and we were using M4 to measure this campaign, and we're going to get into the results in a moment. But it's also important to call out some of the venue types that were used in this activation. And they were digital billboards, urban panels, as well as Uber Who. And I know Barry's not here to talk about purchase funnel or whatnot, but I think there is a degree of purchase funnel because those screens are notoriously used to create brand impact, to have a stronger brand recognized name. And so it's a means to an end, I also feel like, because these screens work together in harmony with other screens that were used in this activation, like grocery store screens, pharmacy screens, and C-stores, convenience store screens. And so those screens at the point of purchase tend to reinforce what's happening in the more splashier, notably called brand awareness screens. So anyway, with that said, let's get into a little bit of the details about the objectives, the KPIs, and Terrence, can you share a little bit from your perspective on the makeup of this campaign?
So PepsiCo as a whole, like a lot of other CPG marketers, we're backing into ROI, we're backing into MMM. In this case, or at least with my team, what we handle is mostly top of the funnel, big reach, mass reach, awareness campaigns. Sometimes we deviate from that a bit, but that is our role, and there are other teams within PepsiCo that take on a different role. In this case, though, we were looking at brand lift for top of mind awareness, for ad recall. These are things that we test on all of our other channels, so it was awesome to see that we could actually do that successfully with digital out of home as well. And then obviously, going back to the ROI point, we're looking at CPO, we're looking to keep things efficient, and yeah, we know that there is an effectiveness to digital out of home that other channels do not provide. So those were the two main things that we were paying attention to.
Correct. That's terrific. Now let's move on to strategy a bit, because talking about data-driven strategies, one thing that we deployed here was use of PepsiCo's access to sales data, but also retail data as well. And it helped us narrow down markets that we needed to focus in on, but also retailers that we wanted to surround with digital out-of-home media. And so it would be great, Terrence, if you could shed a little insight into the inside the walls of PepsiCo to see how this strategy, from your perspective. Excuse me, take it, easy for me to say. Go ahead, Terrence.
Well, at PepsiCo, we're really lucky to have a data stack that provides a lot of insight to our marketers. And we're sitting on top of a lot of really valuable data that we can leverage now on digital out of home very easily. And in this case, we worked with our commercial team, which sits inside of the marketing org. And we were able to identify 14 markets that were opportunities for us. Either they were, in all cases, they were fully stocked and distribution was clearly not an issue. But in some cases, we had markets that we wanted to reaffirm top of mind awareness and make sure that we were standing up to the competitors that we were meeting in those markets. And then in some cases, Bubbly was not selling to the degree that we wanted it to. So we wanted to make sure that we made an impact in those markets. So we treated those differently. And so with this particular campaign, we identified those markets. And we were able to be really strategic about our investment mix within those markets and within the venues that we did select. So we did a bit of a mixed campaign. We allocated a majority of our budget to the larger format screens. But then where we did know that we were selling Bubbly, retail locations where we knew we were selling Bubbly, we were able to actually target indoor venues at the point of purchase, which is awesome. And I know that I mentioned that our objectives are typically more upper funnel, but that's an obvious, that's a miss if we're not taking advantage of the inventory that exists literally when somebody's going to the store and picking out a product, and there you go.
Cool. So let's see, let's look at the results. And using the M4 measurement, we were able to drive lift literally across the board in every metric that they cover. And some of the highlights were a 51% lift in ad recall. And what's really cool is that they're also able to showcase foot traffic in their reports too. And of the exposed population, 27% were more likely to visit the actual stores that we surrounded with media. And 7% lift in purchase intent. So really strong results. And so now the question becomes, Terrence, looking at these results, is this, this is your first digital out of home experience? Did this meet your expectations? Did it exceed your expectations? It'd be great to understand your barometer.
Yeah, we didn't know what to expect from this kind of a study, and frankly, I was, I was it being our first campaign. I had a lot of questions going into it, and then we finally had the results come in, and the confidence levels were comparable to other channels that we work with. So from a study viability perspective, we were very confident with those results. But it really did blow it out of the water. The fact that we did reach we hit high lift. I don't know if we've actually backed into benchmarks, but they were considerably high from an upper funnel perspective, and it was so awesome to see that we got movement on those questions that are typically hard to move a needle on. So, I mean, yeah, this was clearly a full, it was a campaign that did hit off on a lot of full funnel objectives that we had, and we were very, very happy with the results.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, my friend. Yes. It's important to call out too, like, in my personal opinion, coming from a data and measurement background, data always tells a story, and so you have to do your job on looking at all the insights to make sure that you're translating data into a tangible story that helps you activate smarter moving forward. And so, but that's not always the case, because oftentimes marketers would take a report and say, hey, it worked, let's check it off the box and move on, or maybe it didn't work out, and let's not work with that partner any longer. And so the perspective from Pepsi is what is your take on these measurement reports? Are you using it from a test and learn agenda? Are you taking these learnings and getting smarter moving forward? A little insight there would be great.
We are all about testing and learning. We're constantly making sure. I mean, it is another miss. It's a miss when you're just putting money behind something that you think works because you've done it 1,000 times. We are constantly looking to test new platforms, new ad formats, and in this case, we were able to prove the efficacy of an entirely new channel for us. This is something that we have implemented, it's a learning that we've implemented that digital out-of-home works for us, clearly because we've had additional campaigns for Adomni, but we're looking at it from a different lens, not just from like a mass reach lens. We're looking at it as something that can hit off on several different objectives. And I think I talked earlier about how there are other media folks within PepsiCo that have other their initiatives that are different than ours, and we've had conversations with those teams to make sure that they're fully aware about what role digital out-of-home can play. Somebody mentioned this earlier. It's about education, and so this is something that we try to communicate internally.
Okay, that's a good opportunity to move on to the next bubbly campaign, because as we talked about, the first one was for brand awareness, and now we're evolving to use a different form of measurement. It's more enticing and exciting in my personal opinion, but we're leveraging our friends at Catalina to measure this campaign back to point of sale, not only to understand return on ad spend and incremental sales lift, but more importantly in this case is incremental penetration lift. And why is that important here is because it's a very promiscuous category, the sparkling water. People are coming and going out of the franchise. All the more reason to make sure you're constantly pumping people into the franchise and filling up that leaky bucket. So we're going to dive into that, but let's check out the highlights. So, pretty similar venue type selection than the first activation, where we were using digital billboards, urban panels, and Uber, but we also started incorporating fewer, better screens from a point of purchase perspective, shaved off pharmacies and went C-store and grocery store. And so knowing, Terrence, that this is all about sales lift and driving penetration, it'd be great to have a little insight from you as to what the targeting tactics were here.
So this was a campaign that we planned on behalf of the North Division. So we have, typically what we do is sector media, it's national awareness media, but we have different teams that manage more local media activation. And in this case, we worked with North Division to understand within those markets where exactly we were wanting to prioritize investment, where we could double down, and then where we could scale back a little bit, but still maintain exposure across all those markets. This was an interesting one. It was a summer campaign. We had creative that was specifically catered to out of home, and it played into the seasonal bubbly and chill. Summer just got cooler. all the cute taglines, but it was very, very product forward. This is a learning that we had from the last campaign, which was also product forward, but in that case, we were not creating the assets for digital out-of-home. We were creating them from sort of normal spot, and we were creating them, retrofitting them for digital out-of-home. So in this case, we worked with the design team to do these amazing product shots that really take up the full screen and make it look irresistible. Those were served in multiple venue types, like you mentioned, but again, we learned from the last campaign that finding those venues that were, at point of purchase were very important for us and did a lot of good things for us. So what we did was we set aside a specific amount of budget as opposed to programmatic mix for those screens, and that really helped us ensure that we were going to actually deliver against those venues, and again, make sure that we were reaching people who were actually able to purchase Bubbly, as opposed to people who it wasn't in stock, or it's not strong distribution in that market. Luckily, we were able to pull this off, and it was a slightly different approach than what we did in the past, but it was definitely an evolution.
We're seeing that more too, that more marketers and agencies are transferring over their digital media assets to digital out-of-home. And then the panel right before us with GSTV, I mean, it's a perfect example, like leveraging your CTV assets to run on GSTV, same type of thing. Like, why create something new? It's an extension to your digital media. So this is where I typically say, let's look at the results, but we don't have them yet, because this campaign just recently ended to understand what the ROAS is, penetration lift, and sales lift is. We're in fact right now in a post-campaign measurement period where we're still analyzing transactions that are associated with exposures. So more to come on that, so we're really excited to showcase that when the time is right. But we also have reach and frequency data that's coming out for this particular campaign, which until recently has been a void in the industry. So now, from Terrence's point, efficiency is huge for them. So now we'll have a better idea of how efficient we were in terms of who was reached and how many times.
I'll just do one quick thing.
Please.
The variety of studies that we're implementing is awesome. Like, we are able to do brand lift, we're able to do sales lift, we're able to do reach frequency. I mean, like, it feels a very natural transition between the other channels that we work on, and digital out-of-home can do that measurement at the same time.
Excellent. So let's segue. We're in the finish line here, and this is the third and final campaign that we're going to be talking about. This is for Soul Boost, and the mission here was entirely different. We're trying to drive traffic into Walmart locations that carried Soul Boost. So now we're looking at this from a lens of foot traffic. Are we successfully driving consumers into these Walmarts that sell Soul Boost? So we're going to get into that, but let's roll it first. This is an interesting one too, because yes, we're driving foot traffic into Walmart, but arguably it is the most sophisticated approach to data-driven strategy that we've had of all three campaigns. So I think it would just be helpful for you to kind of paint the picture of how you approached narrowing down which Walmart locations and which audience we wanted to go after.
And first, I'll just explain what Soul Boost is.
Yes.
I'm sure you all heard of Bubbly, and that's a common name for you. It's just a regular sparkling water, but in this case, Soul Boost is a functional sparkling water, which is a new category. It's a new category for Pepsi, but it's a new category for a lot of people. Consumers don't understand what it is all the time. All that to be said, it's a very niche audience. It's typically younger. They're living in urban areas. They are perhaps more affluent. So with this, and I'll just give a shout out, great flavor selection, and there's two different moods. There's lift and ease, and try it out for yourself. Sell it on Amazon if you love. Yeah. So with this particular campaign, it was really interesting. We, previously we used commercial data and sales level data. That was, easy. But this was a little bit different. We have within PepsiCo this audience segmentation technology, or it's just a product that we own that is referred to as CDNA, consumer DNA. and essentially it aligns behavioral, location, sales data to inform segments that align with our KSTs. So it's basically our ideal audiences that we own the data for. With this particular campaign, Soul Boost is a new brand. It's trying to sell itself to retailers, and in this case, we wanted to make sure that our customer Walmart was feeling supported. So we use this media campaign as a means of making that point. And so what we did with the campaign strategy was figure out exactly where we were going to be selling Walmart or selling Soul Boost within Walmarts, because there's a lot of Walmarts in the country. Not everyone was selling them. They were strategic about their market selection. In some cases, we had those Walmarts were kind of outside, or like in a mid-sized city. They were outside of a larger city. We honed in on those within the selection of Walmart locations that did have our products, and layered on literally like on a map where our CDN audiences live or where they have a propensity to live, and that informed our venue strategy. We were able to identify venues that were outside of the Walmart or within a mile of those Walmart locations, but then also kind of like driving the more mass reach element of the campaign, reaching those larger format screens that maybe are not directly outside of a Walmart. And I mean, the objective here was to get people in the store, and I mean, I'll show the number in a second, but the results were awesome.
And there they are. So we had a 31% lift in store visits, and there was a question on scale earlier from the room, and so just to put it in perspective, there was about 500,000 exposed IDs that were part of this analysis. And we use Miro, who was recently acquired by Reveal, to work with anybody, but they tend to be our go-to partner when it comes to foot traffic visitation. And their rule of thumb is somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 10% of the entire audience captured for the analyses, and that equated to 500,000 exposed IDs for this particular activation. So super strong, and this is the third and final activation we're going to talk, and it's just very good to call out that each one had a different analysis: brand awareness, ROI sales measurement, and of course foot traffic visitation, based on the KPIs that we're dealing with. So I know that I could carry on longer, but Stephanie is gracefully saying your time is up. And so we'll wrap it up, and I just want to say thank you for listening to Terrence and I speak. Appreciate your time.